Jan, die liefde voor de Irish whisky, die steken we niet onder stoelen of banken. Want echt, wij houden van onze Schotse whiskies. We zijn daarmee opgegroeid. We zijn daarmee groot geworden. Inmiddels een beetje te groot. Ja. Maar dat kan er misschien ook door dat lekkere hapje wat we erbij hebben staan. Maar Ierse whisky, ik vind het wel een van de spannendste categorieën whiskies die er op dit moment is.
Helemaal gelijk, Dennis. En volgens mij komt dat omdat we hier een beetje ook de geschiedenis nu aan het meemaken zijn. We begonnen 4-5 jaar geleden met echt in die Ierse whisky te duiken. Lang links laten liggen, hoewel het ooit mijn eerste was. En ik zit dan vaak op Wikipedia te kijken. Even van welke distilleerderijen zijn er allemaal. En een half jaar geleden 27. En ik klikte hem van de week aan. Het zijn er nu alweer 32. Weet je. Het gaat zo ontzettend hard daar.
Man, het komt nog sneller uit de grond met de distilleries dan alle kleine, flitsbezorgers tegenwoordig.
Ja, zeker. En echt super gaaf. Dus laten we daar weer eens even stil bij gaan staan.
Ja. Dit is Drop or Dram, de podcast voor whiskyliefhebbers. Van beginner tot kenner. Schenk je favoriete glas in en luister met ons mee. Ja, Jan, je had het al over die upcoming new distilleries vanuit de lange geschiedenis die Ierland al kent in de whiskies. Maar al die nieuwe... we hebben wat dingen hier op tafel staan. Uit een van die nieuwe distilleries. Met 3 nieuwe expressies. Maar we weten er eigenlijk niet van deze zo heel veel van.
Ja, heel weinig eigenlijk. Wat ik ervan weet is wat ik nu zie. En we hebben er eentje ingeschonken. Dus ik weet een beetje hoe die proeft. Een label. Groen turquoise en bijna zwart, denk ik, met dit licht. Ja. Een zeemermin op de cover. Nou weet ik, want we hebben het opgezocht. Het is geen zeemermin, maar het is een sirene. Heel zo'n waternimf die vroeger de kapiteins en de zeelui naar de rotsen lokte. En wat ik proef en wat ik ruik. Ik vind het aangenaam, maar ik kan je er niet heel veel over vertellen.
Nee, we hebben het hier over de legendary Silkie Irish Whisky. En dan is dat ook een whisky-naam die niet gelijk wat een belletje doet rinkelen. En de legendary Irish Silkie Whisky, of Irish Silkie, de Silkie Irish Whisky, uit Donegal, een van de mooiste gebieden, en ruige gebieden in Ierland.
Vaak bezongen.
Ja, daar komt jouw muziekkennis als geen ander de hoek om. Absoluut. Wie hebben daarover gezongen? De Dubliners waarschijnlijk?
Een andere,
ja.
Hills of Donegal.
Kijk.
Ik denk als je op Spotify Donegal intikt, dat je maar zo 5-6 nummers hebt.
Kijk. Nou, dat vind ik al een hele leuke link daarheen. Maar de Legendary Silkie is een van die splinternieuwe distilleries die sterker nog pas een aantal maanden geleden helemaal in productie zelf is begonnen. Maar ja, weet je, daar kunnen we heel moeilijk aan doen. We kunnen gaan googlen, we kunnen gaan Wikipedia, Whiskypedia, weet je wat?
Wij zijn 5 jaar geleden in de Iers gedoken, dus wij kennen mensen.
Wij kennen mensen. Ik denk dat wij gewoon de distillery gaan bellen.
Nou, dat eens eventjes doen.
On the other side of the line, and I've got a video link with Ireland. There's James from Sleeve League Distillery. And James, hi, welcome to our podcast show.
Dennis, great to be with you, mate. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well, we're talking about new Irish distilleries. So, of course, we came to Silkie as well. And, we don't know much about the legendary Silkie. Not even about the beautiful women you put on the labels, but also about Silkie. So we thought, well, take it from there. But James Doherty, Sleeve League Distillery. from tea planter in Africa to Scotch whiskey executive roots, and even beer has no secrets for you. Just a small recap.
It's just a small recap. Well, yeah, so I studied agriculture. I went out to Zimbabwe and Malawi, spent 6 years in Malawi growing tea at the foot of Mount Malanje, so right on the Mozambique border. Beautiful place. I had lots of fun, growing tea. After about 6 years or so, just kind of needed a change, needed to do something different. Came back to the UK with Moira, my wife, who is from Zimbabwe, and our gin distiller, and sort of almost accidentally fell into William Grant and Sons, so the Scotch whisky people, and just found a home, if you like. Really, really enjoyed the guys. They enjoyed me. I switched out of production into sales and was going through sort of selling into Eastern Europe and Central Europe at a time where the world was probably a bit unstable, sort of the late 90s into the early 2000s. Worked my way up through Grants over 14 years. Was there at the time when Hendrix was launched, and looked after at one time for the whiskey fans out there, the sort of Glenfiddich Rare Collection, which was the sort of 21-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, up to 64-year-old Glenfiddichs, and released all of those in my time there. Left Grants, 10, 15 years ago now, and joined Foster's in Australia just as they got bought by Sab Miller. And the team from Sab Miller asked me if I'd move to Hong Kong with Peroni. And selling Peroni around the world is really not the hardest thing in the world, is it? But we did 2 years in Hong Kong doing that. But in that time, Moira and I had already decided that we wanted to come back to Donegal, which is the land of my mum and dad. They left here in the 60s, and kind of reclaim this rich distilling heritage. And we thought there was a really good opportunity in there that we could really do something quite special. So we came back at Christmas 2014, and we're now, 7 years in, really. And we have, the beautiful distillery just on stream now behind us. We have a gin brand. We had a couple of tough years at the beginning, but it's going quite well right now.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. So you know your way around tea, beers, and whiskey. So every joy in life, more or less. You're an expert. You're an expert. But you came back to Donegal, and for Irish whiskey, a lot of people know the majority of brands, and Irish whiskey is one of the hottest things out there, as we say. It's very one of the exciting categories out there with tradition, but also tradition with new ways to look at whiskey category. So that's exciting. What Jan and I think is the most exciting thing out there. And Donegal, where you said your heritage is from there, but why Donegal for a distillery? Because it's a remote place in Ireland. It's not the most obvious place to put a distillery.
No, it's not. But I think we sort of have. I have this ambition to build an international spirits business that's based in southwest Donegal. Donegal at one point had more illicit distillers, or was thought to have more illicit distillers than the rest of the island put together. So it was an illegal distilling heartland, and both my grandfathers were illicit distillers. So, and bizarrely, even when I was a student, I hitchhiked over here and came to see my gran, and my granddad had been dead a few years then, and she gave me his pochine recipe, which at the time I was sort of wanting to be a farmer in Africa, so why she gave it to me, I have no idea, but it must have planted a seed with me. But it kind of seemed alien to both Moira and myself that if a county that had this rich illicit distilling heritage didn't have a legitimate distilling presence, and the last distillery here was Burt in 1841, and it made a spirit that was quite like the sort of whiskies of today, the Irish whiskies of today, but it never really got traction because of all the illegal distilling. So we said, well, look, if Irish whiskey today is a smooth, sweet, easy taste, historically, which is a taste of the city, I think, historically it would have been a rural thing, as it was in the Scottish Highlands. And if you look at this kind of rural, remote sort of idea, then we were able to sort of go back to what whiskey would have been like in this area, sort of in the late 1800s and sort of pre-prohibition, which is where peat would have been the predominant heat source. So that's what would have been used to dry the malt. So Irish whiskey would have been peated. I think even Bushmills was peated up until the sort of late 70s or early 80s. And that's kind of got written out of history. So we felt like that was a really distinctive position that we could take back. We also wanted to use seaweed and the local botanicals to create gin, because we thought we had and make gin a savoury gin in the same way that it would be, the whole world has gone sweet, so we're going to go savoury. And with Irish whiskey being sweet, smooth and easy, we were going to put back that kind of rich, smoky challenge into it. And that felt like two distinctive positions that would be true to the county of Donegal, but they would also be an interesting place for Irish whiskey to go back to.
Yeah, and you were saying it is a very interesting thing, but because if we talk Irish whiskey everywhere in the world, and we know all about the rise and fall for Irish whiskey in the recent past, and there is a very good reason there is for it, and even now when we're here in Holland, a lot of people think about Irish whiskey of just what you were saying, smooth, easy, not very complex. But with all those new distilleries and exciting wood types and all those history, what's there and coming back to life, it isn't smooth, easy, not complex. It's totally the opposite. So it's a new category. And as you were saying, Donegal has a very peat orientated mindset. We even with the poachine that was peated for the listeners that don't know what poachine is. It's more like you can call it a sort of new make made from everything else, and typically Irish. Yeah, absolutely. I think also you've got this. If you think you've seen it in beer, where there's this sort of hyper consolidation, and then it came, what came out of that was the sort of craft beer movement. And you looked at gin, it became hyper consolidated around 3 or 4 brands, and then it became all about craft gin. And Irish whiskey, for me, thank goodness it was hyper consolidated at one point, because at least the industry survived. If it wasn't for Jameson, Bushmills, and John Teeling, where would we be? But there's now there's definitely a point now where we move from that smooth, sweet, easy into a much more a deeper, more diverse kind of platform of whiskies that reflect the area they're from and reflect the history of them. And you talk about casks at the moment. Everybody, we're all using casks because where we're sourcing whiskies, you've got to. How do you differentiate them? How do you add flavor to them? How do you, we've got to talk a cask story, but you'll see now in the next 5 years or so, and particularly, even with our own distillery, you're going to look at how grain comes back into it, because people are going to have their own distillates and they're going to have their own, their own ways of their own mash bills, their own cut points. So I think that the wood movement is kind of interesting. I think it's for now, but sort of 5, 8 years, 10 years out, you'll start to see a completely different movement where that real depth and diversity is coming out of the core spirit rather than the wood types. Yeah, so the wood types is more like what they do right now, experimenting which way do we want to go, what works best for us, what the Scotch whiskey industry did for years and years ago. More or less by accident with the sherry cask and all. But you got a different point of view. You said the magic word for a lot of people, smoky.
Smoky, yeah.
And the Silkie Irish whiskey that we know, at the moment there are 3 expressions out there: the legendary Silkie Irish whiskey, the legendary Irish whiskey, the dark Silkie, and your latest edition, the midnight Silkie. Take us through these 3 expressions.
Well, there's a couple of things going on really with Silkie. One is that we're sourcing these whiskies and their blends, so it was important for us that we didn't call them after the distillery. So the Ardra distillery, which we've built, is making only smoky whiskey, which makes it kind of unique in Ireland. I think we're the only distillery that's dedicated to peated Irish. The Silkies are a journey in smoky Irish. Obviously we've got to break into this. We've got to try and get people to try Irish and believe that it was smoky. And so the Silkies now are designed, blended by me to get you on a journey through smoke. So the legendary Silkie, the first one, is the blend has 4% of it is peated Irish, and so it's a triple distilled peated. And what we notice when we triple distill is you get, if we look at the intermediate still and you taste those whiskies, they are very Scotch-like. So they have a TCP iodine note. You get a lot of phenols that you would expect to see from Islay. Once you put it through that third still, you really end up with the dry, ashy tobacco smoke aromas, but you've lost all of the TCP and iodine, and that makes it a much more accessible taste. So with Silkie, what we've done is we've put 4% of the blend there. Is that they're all non-chill filtered natural color, so we don't use any coloring in them, and it's almost butterscotch sweet because it uses a grain. The grain whiskey is maize based, so you've got this real butterscotch sweetness to it. And then we've layered on top of that a sort of a double distilled sherry cask, matured single malt, a triple distilled bourbon cask, and then we've got two grains. One is virgin oak and one is rechar cask, which gives us a few more esters and sort of flavour. So that's quite close to where Irish whiskey is today, really. There's just a hint of smoke on the taste, not so much on the nose. So it's easy for people to get into. And it almost sort of gives us, it's about showing we've got blending credentials, if you like. We know how to make a balanced whiskey.
Yeah, well, that is another word, blending. A lot of people that drink whiskey at the moment, most people drink blended whiskeys, even if they don't know it. And all those people that do drink whiskeys, the magic word is always single malt. Somehow down the line, blending is sometimes disregarded as inferior whiskey, which is totally not the case. And you were just telling us you use single malts, and even if I talk to whiskey lovers around festivals and tastings and say, what do you think about Irish whiskey? Blended, not peated, triple distilled. Well, you were just saying single malts, double distilled, single malts, triple distilled, grain whiskey, column whiskey, recharred, sherry, bourbon, blah. There's so much out there.
Yeah.
All those three things they think about Irish whiskey. It's not the case. It is, the blending is a very important part of your product, but also, there is a lot of blending done more or less in single malt whiskey as well, because single malt whiskies is obvious. It's not a single cask. It is blended together. It is like a recipe from one distillery.
I think also the Irish and the Scotch industries have been quite clever about telling quite singular stories to the category. So if you're a Scotch whiskey drinker, everyone believes it's double distilled and peated, and actually less than 15% of the Scotch category is peated, and not all of it is double distilled. And the idea that Irish whiskey is all triple distilled and blended and not complicated is also not true. You know, there's a hell of a lot of double distilled Irish whiskies out there. There are now more people doing peated, and you're getting much more complexity and depth and diversity in the category. So I think we've had 30 or 40 years of people telling a story, brands and companies telling stories and category stories that's now being rewritten by the sort of the craft guys, the smaller guys coming in, because we're all telling different stories as opposed to telling the one similar story. So, I think for us it was about, I was very lucky, I think, when I was at William Grant's. I spent time with David Stewart, who's the Balvenie malt master, but he was also the blender of Grant's whiskey, and a supremely modest man, but absolutely phenomenal man to sort of learn from. And I would hope that if he tasted our whiskey, he can probably see his fingerprints in terms of balance. He was massive on balance and making sure you didn't have spiky flavors in there. And we certainly try and do that. That's why we do it. But when we try and migrate people, I guess, to take you on a journey through smoke. So if you say, I don't like smoky Irish whiskies, I'll probably tell you you don't like the iodine taste of Islay, and this is dry smoky, so you'll try it. And with the legendary Silkie, you're in a space which says this is very comfortable, very safe, because it's quite close to where Irish whiskey is today. Then if you get to dark Silkie, you now start to see us bridging into the new world, which is 15% of this is peated Irish, triple distilled peated. 15% is double distilled, unpeated, but in sherry cask. And then 70% of that blend is virgin oak grain whiskey made with a maize grain. And so this is salted caramel sweet, and it's just got this big, smoky kind of pipe smoke blanket laid over the top of it. And it's rich and round and comforting. And it was inspired by the smell of my grandfather's pipe. So when I was a kid and we used to come over to Ireland, because I grew up in England, we used to come to Ireland for all of our summers. You'd go into the kitchen, and in the morning, Granddad's pipe would be sat beside the range, the cooker, and it would be, you could just pick it up and you would sort of walk around the kitchen like you were the big man with sucking on his pipe. And that sweet tobacco, ashy taste is just really visceral for me in my head as something very comforting, very safe, time of real joy. And so we try to capture that in the dark Silkie and take you on that journey to a smokier Irish whiskey. And then we come to sort of midnight, which is where we are. Our most recent release came out just before Christmas. I think it's arriving with you.
It is arrived. I've got the bottle here next to me. So as you see, it's opened already. So I was really surprised. Yeah, it was really nice. I love my smoky whiskies, but I love my Irish whiskies. I love all whiskies more or less. So that was really seeing the dark Silkie we tasted before and the legendary Silkie. The legendary Silkie as a base being real Irish, what you expect for Irish, but much more rounded, full-bodied than the obvious usual suspects. And then the dark was not in-your-face whiskey. It wasn't in-your-face smokiness.
No.
I always try to explain people that there is a difference for me in peatiness and smokiness. I see Islay whiskies as peated and in-your-face smoke, and smokiness that you can find in Scotch whiskey in Highlands, that there is like Highland Park or Talisker. There is the smokiness in there, but it's and even Bowmore, for example. But it's layered underneath. So as soon as you taste it, it will come alive. But it's not like predominant in your nose straight away. Bang. And the dark Silkie's got that for me. It's the smokiness comes with every little sip. And now the midnight smoky, that was a little bit more as a surprise. That was like in the nose and taste, there is smoke. It's not peated, it's not heavily, but it's that's exactly. So I suppose I should also say that I always drink, I mean, I'm sure lots of whiskey purists will balk at this, but I always drink whiskey with ice. I love cold drinks, so I drink with ice. It's a hangover from Africa, but so these are all blended specifically to work well with ice. And anyone who doesn't try with ice, I'd say you should try most things with ice, because it knocks the aromas down a little bit and it changes the nature of the taste, which is really quite interesting. So some whiskies that are worth trying with ice just to see how they go. But with midnight, what we've done is taken the percentage that's smoky Irish in there is now 35% of the blend is smoky Irish. It is actually a single malt, so all of the whiskies are from one distillery, so they're all from Great Northern. It has a triple distilled single malt in a Cabernet Sauvignon casks, and that provides the backbone, the roundness of it. It has triple distilled bourbon cask, but finished in imperial stout casks. It has triple distilled sherry casks that's then been finished in virgin oak to give it a real sort of spiciness, and it kind of really takes the color down deep, which is lovely. And it also has triple distilled matured solely in Oloroso sherry, and then 35% of it is triple distilled peated that's been in a bourbon cask. So
we don't call it a single malt because I think if you say single malt, people assume it's from your distillery. So I think it's important for us that we're clear that these whiskies, all of the whiskies in here are bought in and sourced by us. But what we're trying to get is that this probably gives you the best indication of what the whiskies from the Ardra distillery will be like. So it's much more in style, taking you from that really smooth, sweet, easy space of the legendary through dark to this midnight, which is kind of taking you to where I think Donegal whiskies of old were, and that's what we're trying to bring back with the distillery. But in the Silkies, we're hoping that we can kind of get people on a journey to enjoy that and make these accessible, so they're not ferociously expensive. You know, they are premium, so they are. You know, they cost more than the sort of standard Irishes, but we're not. We try to make them affordable, make them drinkable, and give people a kind of a range that they can kind of pick which level of peating they want to sit at, or which level of smoke they want to sit at. And I suspected when we started the journey that we would get majority of people migrating to dark Silkie, but that hasn't been the case. I mean, I think Midnight has been our best sell-in ever, but on the kind of core business before Midnight, we would sell sort of 45% of our business would have been Silkie and 55% would have been dark Silkie. Whereas I thought it might migrate more to dark Silkie. But I think what you're seeing is we're showing people that smoky Irish is a genuine thing, and that it's as accessible as Irish whiskey is in comparison to Scotch, and that it's a distinctive kind of spot within the Irish category, which we think, you know, Connemara has done single malt peated for a while and very successfully. Hopefully we're showing people that you can do it in a much more accessible way, and you can enjoy more than one. It's not the kind of drink you have one of and then you put it away. It's got a balance and a sweetness that says I can drink more than one of these and really enjoy it.
So the Midnight Silkie is back to the heritage of Donegal whiskey. Part of it. It's taking you still on a journey. Because where is this journey going? It's going to be peated whiskies. And you were saying at the moment all your whiskies are sourced, which is something a lot of Irish whiskies do. But on the good thing, and I can see it on your background as a video, but there is a beautiful distillery, a brand new distillery built right there and producing at the moment. So in the near future, we're not going to see sourced whiskey. We're going to see solely produced whiskies by you.
We'll see as well as sourced. So, you know, if you look at sourcing, I think it's kind of got a bit of a bad name and a bit unfairly because, you know, if you think about Johnny Walker, I think there are 42 whiskies in a bottle of Johnny Walker.
It's sourced from all distilleries,
It's for lots of distilleries, and not all of them are owned by Diageo. No. So, and you know, if you look at, I don't know, you know, look at Grants or Teachers or whatever, all of these blends will all have whiskies from all over the place. So, I think it's a reflection of the kind of relative youth, because Irish whiskey is a kind of at the same time, it's like the oldest whiskey distilling heritage in the world. But actually, you've also got this new craft movement, which means it's also the youngest industry in the world.
And that makes it exciting.
And that makes it exciting. And it also means there's a bit of a tension in there. And so for me, it's about, you know, Silkie will continue to source the whiskies. Obviously, we can make the peated element of this. But we can't make the unpeated because I'm not making any unpeated whiskies. And I can't make the grain whiskies because I'm not making any grain whiskey. So, you know, we've got a plant, the distillery is designed to produce peated single malt and peated pot still. In fact, I was in yesterday morning, we were doing our peated pot still, which is non-compliant. So we're peating everything to 50 parts a million on the malt. The green barley is from Donegal, and on the pot still, we're using peated oats as well. So 20% of the recipe is peated oats. So, it's a very, so we'll continue to build Silkie. Silkie is a long-term opportunity for us. We think it's about building accessibility into Irish whiskey, It's also about proving our route to market so that we can actually get distribution around the world, so that when the whiskies that come out of the Ardra distillery will be available, we'll be able to go out to customers who we already know, we already work with, have already proved, we've proved that we've got a good relationship. So I think Silkie has lots of key strategic things to do for us, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. I get to express myself in the blends. I've got some finishes coming along. So red Silkie, which we made 2 years ago.
That was one of the specials, and I've got a bottle of here in a red Silkie. That was really, really exciting. good
so
stuff.
We're doing that'll be again this quarter. At the end of this year, we'll have that again. And I've got a couple
Don't tell people. Shh. We want to keep something for ourselves. So it was so limited available.
Yeah, well, and then it'll still be limited. But I've got a couple of others that are on the go at the moment as well, which are really exciting. So, it's lovely that we've got a core range of Silkie, which is Silkie Legendary Dark, and then we have some interesting. All of them telling a story and all playing, all producing sort of superbly balanced whiskies that tell you that smoky journey.
So that smoky journey will continue, and we'll see in that journey even more peated expressions. And as you were saying, your point of view on blending with the latest one, the midnight silking, consisting of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 different casks with the finishes. Yeah. Very, very complex with 6 totally different tastes from casks. So we'll see more and more smoky coming from Donegal, but also, as you were saying, specials like the red Silkie, matured on wine casks, red wine casks, and probably even more surprises, because I know you a little bit, and I know your head is spinning around with all different ideas.
It's hard. The hardest thing with sometimes is actually staying focused on the center of the business. There's lots of things you can do, and there's loads of ideas that we have that we will do. But it's really important for us that we kind of really build the business properly from the ground up, that we get it structured correctly, and get that surprise. We want to surprise people with smoke. If you look at the kind of bond between people who are into smoky whiskies or peated whiskies, there's an incredible bond there, and we kind of want to bring more people into that world, but we want to do it by surprising them, because Irish whiskey isn't associated with that smoky taste, and we kind of, hopefully by doing the Silkies the way we are going to bring people into that kind of, I didn't like peated whiskies, but I do like this, and they kind of surprise themselves, and we become that kind of gateway that get people into this world. And I think for me that's a big win for us anyway, but it's a big win for Donegal, and it's a step for the Irish whiskey category that gets us into that kind of a much deeper, a much more diverse, a richer place for the whole category, which I think is a really brilliant place to be.
Oh, that's great. This the big surprises that is coming along, and you keep us surprising. And I think when people get into Irish whiskey at this moment, they will be surprised. And like I said always, Irish whiskey is back, and start exploring, because so many Irish whiskeys will surprise you in a way that you never seen before. So a forgotten category is back, and one of the hottest things out there. So
definitely. And I think you've got some really interesting stuff, like us with our kind of smoky journey. I don't know, you've got guys down at Blackwater who it's all about the grain, and they're using different grain types and stuff. You've got other guys who are Radaman using rye. You've got Boan doing heritage mash bills. Dingle with their kind of, they make that wonderful oily spirit that they make. There's so many things kind of going on that there's space for everyone to tell their story in a really good way. So it's a wonderful time. It's an exciting time to be in the category.
Yeah. Well, that is great. And I've got 3 bottles here. So together with Jan, we'll be starting exploring this further at the moment. And we'll take it away. James, thank you very much talking everything Irish and especially Silkie and with the big surprises and readily available in across the Netherlands and Belgium soon or now. So start exploring and thank you very much for this.
Dennis, thank you so much for having me on, man. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll see you somewhere on a festival or a tasting around here. And otherwise, when people go to Ireland, there are cheap flights to Donegal at the moment. They started a new airline to it. Yeah, it's going to be great links to Donegal. And don't forget it, because it's a beautiful part of Ireland. And visit you guys.
Absolutely. Come and see us. It'll be something of a pilgrimage. The welcome in Donegal is like no other in the world. And keep it smoky.
Yeah, keep it smoky. That's great. Thanks, James.
All right, take care.
Ja, Jan. Met James aan de lijn. Ja, die weet alles.
Helder.
Heel helder, toch? Geweldig, hè? Een prachtige nieuwe distillery. Vlak bij de kust van Donegal. Die uitkijkt over de woeste baren. Als hij even ver kijkt, dan kan hij precies Amerika zien op een mooie dag.
Het is een beetje een jongensdroom ook gewoon, hè? Hoe hij dat gedaan heeft.
Ja, het is ook best wel lef.
Ja.
Ja.
Eén ding moet ik wel bekennen, Dennis. Ik kreeg er best wel een beetje dorst van.
Ja. Nou, gelukkig hebben we hier drie flessen staan. Nou ja, in het begin hebben we natuurlijk de gewone legendary Silkie al opengemaakt. Ja, dat is echt een typische Irish whisky. Tenminste, wat je verwacht van Irish whisky.
Ja, dat. En dan net met een vleugje citrus. Dus ik vind hem... Ja, weet je, het is ook niet. Het is wel echt een toevoeging op het Iers palet, vind ik.
Ja, en het is niet zo vlak Iers, want er zit een heel klein mini hintje rook in dat geeft hem net even dat body.
Ja, maar dan ook echt niet meer dan 5% of zo, als je het zo moet uitdrukken op een schaal.
Nee, het is minimaal. Het is nauwelijks te proeven, maar het geeft net even die body. En wat James ook wel vertelde natuurlijk, ja, het is ook traditie. En dat wist ik eigenlijk niet goed. Dat die traditie van gerookte whiskies ook daar zo heel erg stevig geworteld is. Ja, we wisten natuurlijk wel dat Ieren ook vroeger gewoon smoky whisky maakten. Maar dat zo diep geworteld in Donegal was, dat was even verrassend.
Ja, en tegelijkertijd als je dan het landschap ziet, dan denk je, waarom eigenlijk ook niet natuurlijk.
Nee, ja.
Ik moet trouwens heel eerlijk zeggen, Dennis. Jij hebt dat natuurlijk gezien, maar de luisteraar niet. Terwijl jij met hem aan het praten was, dacht ik, dan proef ik gewoon die dark Silkie ook nog eventjes. En die is dan, die is ook weer lekker zacht. En die heeft net wat meer kick. Hè. Die is net wat meer smoky nog dan de legendary Silkie. Ik vond het ook wel mooi hoor. En nu ben ik dus benieuwd naar deze.
Ja, dat is de laatste toevoeging. En dat is iets wat ze natuurlijk... pretenderen zo meteen alleen maar te gaan maken. Want ze gaan smoky whiskies maken. Dat is hun uitgangspunt natuurlijk. Alles smoky whiskies. Geen peated whiskies.
En daarmee, Dennis,
smoky whiskies.
Maak ik dan toch even een klein bruggetje naar die andere aflevering van ons over investeren. Dit is dus zeg maar, luisteraars, dit is wat je zou kunnen noemen voorkennis. Dus ga nu naar de winkel, haal een paar van die legendary Silkies, zet ze weg. Want op het moment dat Silkie alleen nog maar echt die hele smoky whiskies maakt, dan heb je iets wat dus steeds zeldzamer wordt.
Ja, dus we ben benieuwd. Maar het grappige is, we hebben dus de legendary Silkie, we hebben de dark Silkie. Nou ja, de dark zegt het natuurlijk al. Een klein beetje smokiness in er. Het is een heat of pint. Ook in de Schotse whisky. Ja. hint of Piet. Inderdaad. Jeetje, ik moet stoppen met drinken. Nee, misschien ligt het daaraan. Maar die hint of Piet. En dat vind je natuurlijk ook in veel Schotse whiskies. Het is nog steeds officieel een blended.
Ja.
Daar zit grain whisky in verwerkt. Maar wel mooi, wat we zeiden al. Die Ieren, die durven wel. Ze gebruiken single malts.
Ja.
Ze gebruiken blendeds. Ze gebruiken grain. En 3 keer gedistilleerd. 2 keer gedistilleerd. Bourbon, sherry, nieuw eiken. Het maakt ze allemaal niet uit. Als het maar smaakt.
Zeker. En dan zit ik toch, hè, want nou ja, we moeten langzamerhand toch even naar die tasting notes toe, Dennis. Nogmaals, ik krijg toch een beetje dorst van het verhaal.
Nou, komt-ie.
Kijk, en dan zit ik alvast eventjes mee te lezen met die Legendary Whisky. Maar dat is me nogal een blend, zeg. Alle delen van de blend zijn triple gedistilleerd. Alle delen zijn single malt.
Dus het is
sommige delen zijn peated.
Blended malt.
Blended,
het is geen single malt, maar wel een blended malt.
Voorheen de vetted malt, hè, maar tegenwoordig dus de blended malt. Voor de oudere luisteraars.
Wel grappig, want het is een blended malt die allemaal uit één distilleerderij komt.
Ja.
Dus het zou eigenlijk een single malt kunnen zijn.
Ja. Hè?
Dat ben ik vergeten te vragen.
Nou goed, we gaan hem nog wel een keer bellen. Maar dus zeg maar, de meeste delen zijn non-peated en een enkele is wel gepeat. En dan begint het interessant te worden. De rijping van die diverse delen die in deze blended malt zitten, hebben gerijpt op sherry en virgin oak vaten. Dan wel op stout vaten.
Ja,
Hè?
biervaten, ex-biervaten.
Bourbon, kennen we ook.
Ja.
Oloroso.
Sherryvaten.
En op red wine vaten.
Echt bijzonder. En van die red wine cast, daar heeft de Silkie ooit een special van uitgebracht. Vorig jaar. Over investment opportunities. Daar hebben ze een 400-tal flessen van uitgebracht. Dus als je die nog kan krijgen, dan zit je goed.
Morgen gelijk googlen.
Ja, dat zou ik zeker eventjes doen. Maar Jan, jij hebt die smokiness al in je glas en je hebt hem je neus er al in gestoken. Ja, het is een smokiness en geen peated whiskies. Peated denk je natuurlijk gelijk aan die zware Islay whiskies. Dat heeft het niet. Maar het heeft een hint of rook. Niet zo sterk in je neus, vind ik.
Nee, eerder nog dan rook een beetje houtachtig. Beetje.
Ja, de rook zit wat verborgen als je hem in je neus hebt. Maar mocht je hem namelijk een slokje nemen, dan komt hij
ik zit een beetje te zoeken naar het woord. Baklucht bedoelde ik.
Baklucht.
Ik denk gebakken lucht. Dus, nee, als je oven, je hebt er iets in staan. Appels, brownie, weet je wel. Een beetje die. Dan heb je ook soms een hint van wat rook en smaken door elkaar heen.
Ja, op die manier. Ja. Nou,
Mooie geuren.
Het deed mij ook even een beetje herinneren sommige Speyside whiskies hebben tegenwoordig ook allemaal een beetje dat wel een expressie waar wat rook in komt. Ardmore bijvoorbeeld.
Ja.
Maar daar ruik je die rook niet. Maar zodra je een slokje neemt, dan bam.
Oh, maar dit, ik heb hem ondertussen geproefd. Moet je zo ook even doen.
Ja.
Je proeft hem. En dan proef je die rook ook niet. Je proeft eerst een beetje wat donkerzoet. Hè? Wat een oude rum ook kan hebben. En dan denk je van, hey. En dan ineens, dan komt er een zoete rooksmaak binnen.
Ja.
En daarna begint die smaak zich echt te verrijken.
Ja, en dan inderdaad, die rook die blijft lang hangen.
Ja.
En inderdaad, hij heeft dat frisse in het begin en dat hele rode fruitachtige. En die rook die het is net.
En die rook
hij
die
blijft hangen.
Dat rood fruit wat meer in zachte rozijnen.
Ja,
beetje spicy ook wel.
En elke keer, ik heb nu al een tijdje dat slokje doorgezet. En elke keer als ik nu even wat lucht had, dan blijf ik die rook proeven. En dat vind ik wel leuk.
Ja, maar hij ontwikkelt wel die rooksmaak. Je kunt ook van die overpowerde turf hebben, weet je. Dan blijft heel lang
een bek vol rook.
Ja, maar dan blijft ook dezelfde rooksmaak hangen. En hier Nou ja, nogmaals, je begint dus een beetje met dat citrusrood fruit. En dan wordt het wat rozijntjesachtig. En ik begin nu wat meer koffie-leerachtige tonen. Het is echt een hele mooie ontwikkelende smaak. Een warme...
De rook zit er echt in geblend. Het zit echt in verborgen. Het zit in verweven. Het heeft echt die verwevenheid van rook. Het is niet, zoals jij al zei, het ligt er bovenop. 1 smaak, tweede smaak, derde smaak. Nee, het is vroeger zo'n toverbal. Je neemt het in je mond en elke keer komt er een nieuw smaakje. En je sappelt verder en komt die weer over. En dan komt in één keer die smaak die je de eerste keer had, die komt nog een keertje. Zoiets. Dus het is eigenlijk een beetje een toverbal onder de whiskies.
Niet je tong uitsteken nu, hè? Ik vind het wel mooi. Helemaal met dat verhaal erbij.
Ja. Die Ieren, die zijn echt op de goede weg.
Ja. Mijn vrouw houdt niet van rokerige whiskies, maar ik denk dat ik er deze toch even ga laten proeven.
Nou, dat lijkt me dan heel verstandig dat je dat gaat doen. Ik zeg, we schenken er nog even snel eentje in. En dan gaan we genieten. En dan maken we weer een prachtige nieuwe aflevering, denk ik, volgende keer.
Tot dan.
Dag.
Dit was Drop or Dram. Vergeet niet om je te abonneren op onze podcast of kijk op onze website www.dropordram.nl. Tot de volgende keer.